Hello friends, welcome back to our channel and the Catechism for Kids. Back with me again, Joseph, your host. Today's material is quite a heavy one, but let's try to know and learn about it. Have you ever heard of Canon Law? It sounds pretty official, maybe even a little intimidating. But what if I told you that this ancient legal system, the oldest in the Western world, isn't about control, but about something much deeper? It affects every one of the 1.3 billion Catholics on the planet, whether they realize it or not. And its ultimate goal might surprise you. Stick around, because we're going to demystify the Catholic Church's rulebook and discover why it's more about mercy and mission than you might think. So, what exactly is canon law? Simply put, it's the internal legal system of the Catholic Church. Think about it. Any society, especially one with over 1 billion members scattered across the globe, needs structure to function. Imagine trying to drive on a highway with no rules of the road. Total chaos, right? In the same way, the Church needs a framework to carry out its mission, and that framework is canon law. The word canon itself just means rule. But this isn't like the legal system you see on TV. While it does cover things you might expect, like property, contracts, and trials, it also governs things civil law can't touch, like the sacraments, sacred places, and religious teaching. Its history goes all the way back to the New Testament. In the book of Acts, we see the apostles figuring out procedures to replace Judas. And in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus gives a process for resolving disputes within the community. Over 2,000 years, this system grew through church councils, papal decrees, and court decisions, often borrowing from ancient Roman legal traditions. This long evolution has deeply influenced many principles we now take for granted in modern law, like due process and equity. Eventually, all these scattered rules and decisions were collected and organized. The first comprehensive code of canon law was published in 1917, but after the major theological shifts of the Second Vatican Council, a new code was needed. So, in 1983, Pope John Paul II issued the Code of Canon Law that governs the Latin or Roman Catholic Church today. It's just to be thorough. A separate code for the 23 Eastern Catholic churches was released in 1990, respecting their unique traditions. Now, let's take a walk through the 1983 code, which is divided into 7 books. Don't worry, we won't read all 1,752 canons. We're just getting the lay of the land. Book 1 is called General Norms. This is the engine of the whole system. It explains how laws are made, who they apply to, and how they're interpreted. It might sound a bit dry, but without these foundational rules, the rest of the code wouldn't make sense. Book 2 is the People of God. This is huge. It defines the rights and obligations of everyone in the church, from the laity to the clergy. If you've ever wondered what your rights are as a Catholic, like the right to receive the sacraments or to a Catholic education, this is where you'd find them. This book also lays out the hierarchical structure, the role of the Pope, bishops, parishes, and religious orders. Next, Book 3 covers the teaching function of the Church. This regulates things like preaching the gospel, catechism, missionary work, and Catholic education, all the way up to universities. It clarifies the different levels of authority behind church teachings. Book 4, the sanctifying function, is the largest section. This is all about the 7 sacraments. It details what's required for a valid baptism, confirmation, or Eucharist. A huge part of this book deals with marriage, what makes it valid, and the grounds for an annulment. It also covers other acts of worship, like funerals, and the rules for sacred places like churches and shrines. Book 5 is about the temporal goods of the Church. This is the Church's property and financial law. It sets out the rules for administering church assets, handling contracts, and managing finances responsibly to support the Church's mission. Then we have Book 6, Sanctions in the Church. This is the Church's penal law. Yes, the Church has a system for addressing crimes. It defines offenses like heresy or abuse and outlines the corresponding penalties, such as excommunication. In 2021, Pope Francis heavily revised this book to increase accountability, especially in the handling of abuse cases. The goal here is threefold: repair scandal, restore justice, and reform the offender. Finally, Book 7 is Processes. This is the law and order section, but probably less dramatic. It details the procedures for ecclesiastical courts, including marriage annulment cases and other trials. Most of these cases are handled through documents rather than in an open courtroom, which is actually common in legal systems around the world that were influenced by Roman law. So with all these rules and books, it's easy to get bogged down in the details. But if you remember one thing, let it be this. The single most important rule in the entire code is the very last one, Canon 1752. It states, "The salvation of souls is the supreme law." Let that sink in. The ultimate purpose of every single rule, from parish finances to papal authority, is to serve that one supreme goal. Canon law isn't law for law's sake. It's what we might call applied theology. It's designed to help people get to heaven by keeping the church's mission focused, fair, and orderly. It exists to safeguard the sacraments, ensuring they are celebrated with reverence and validity. It defines and protects the rights and duties of every single baptized person, and it provides the structure needed to govern a global community. This brings us to a common misconception that law is the opposite of mercy. Some people, even some priests, might see canon law as rigid and not very pastoral. But true mercy requires justice. Justice means giving each person their due. If someone is wronged, they desire justice. Mercy doesn't erase justice, it perfects it. Think about it. Mercy means ensuring that your right to receive the true teachings of the church is protected. It means the sacraments you receive are valid. It means church finances are handled properly. It means those who harm others are held accountable. It means everyone receives due process under the law. These are all concrete ways that canon law serves the work of mercy in the church. As Pope Francis said, justice and mercy aren't two contradictory realities, but two dimensions of a single reality that culminates in the fullness of love. And canon law is not a static museum piece. It continues to evolve. As of 2025, there's a huge focus on transparency and shared governance. As I mentioned, abuse reform is a major priority, with new laws criminalizing grooming and holding bishops accountable for failures to report. We're also seeing new structures that allow the people, including women, to hold significant administrative roles in the Vatican that were once reserved only for clergy. And of course, the Church is grappling with our digital world, debating how technology impacts canonical processes. So, canon law is far from a dusty, irrelevant set of rules. It is a living, breathing system at the service of the Church's mission. It's the bridge between the spiritual heart of the Church, its faith and theology, and its practical hands, how it functions in the real world. It doesn't replace your conscience or your faith. Instead, it supports them by providing order, fairness, and clarity. It's the framework that helps protect the dignity of all God's people on their journey toward the ultimate goal, the salvation of souls. Thanks so much for watching. If this video helped you understand the Church a little better, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content just like this. Please consider supporting us by becoming a member of the channel or a one-time donation through Super Thanks. It will really help us in our mission. Take care, everyone. Stay safe and healthy. See you next time, and God bless you always.